to bring us this matter into context. Good morning to you, Doctor.
Morning, how are you doing?
I am disturbed. I won't lie about that. Disturbed by the debt, the conversations, the borrowing left, right, and center.
Sometimes being disturbed actually triggers the necessary action, so it's okay to be disturbed.
I was told that. Kobaket, you're most welcome once again.
Thank you so much.
And how is it down there at the Parliament?
At the Parliament, I'll start with my constituency. The roads are terrible. People are broke. And the Parliament is doing whatever it can do to make sure people's lives are comfortable.
Okay, all right. I will start with what was tabled by Honorable Golobi. The motion on Monday was considered by Parliament. And I want to find out from you, from that parliamentary sitting, what was the consideration that was given for that decision to be taken?
Thank you so much. I do want the viewers to appreciate that it's this 11th Parliament that actually passed the budget that is running in the country in May 20th. And the theme of the budget was mainly monetization of the Ugandan economy through commercial agriculture, industrialization, expansion, widening of services, and then market, easy market access. Now, it would look kind of appalling if the same Parliament goes against a budget that it approved. The Minister of Finance came in this House, the 11th Parliament, and brought out a picture that they have only funded 7% of the development certificate in our budget, 7%. And that had implications on the performance of the budget. He came up with solutions. If we want our budget to perform, which we approved, we should go into loans. And the loans are not to buy MPs new cars, suits, or sausages. The loans are not going to purchase a brand new fleet of motorcade for the president. The loans are actually targeting the theme we are. You look at electricity. I was watching you air out an incident, really so sad for a family that caught fire and several members of the family perished. We are looking at electricity, and electricity helps a lot in industrialization. You cannot talk of industrialization and not talk of electricity. The loan that we are acquiring is to increase electricity connection within the country. Let me take you to my constituency. In my constituency, I think the electricity connection doesn't reach 100 homesteads. Even as I'm on TV right now, most of my voters cannot watch what I'm trying to deliver to the country. Now, if we can't have electricity, if this country cannot provide sustainable or adequate, efficient electricity to our investors who are coming, then what are we looking at? At the end of the day, it's about the profits that we're going to get from that, from the budget. It's okay. Look at the loan, the other loan that they came for, and that is the digital digital improvement. Yeah, we are looking at internet. Most of the business are going online. Government to function, it's going online. No, we need smartphones. I need someone in Puranga village, deep, to know that he can actually communicate with an investor in America or sell their system to America. We are taking the right channel probably by taking to the loan. But then look at the, I want you to look at the debt GDP ratio Uganda is having currently. The last time I checked, we are at 40. Economists and the doctor will clearly tell you that unless if you have surpassed 50%, then you can start doing what we're in. Kenya is at 47. Rwanda is at 45 roughly. We're at 40. No, look at other countries. The trick is not about borrowing. That's not the problem. Let me take you to a family I knew of. We had a family of a rich man, so we thought. But this gentleman was living on loan. Our father, who I respect so much, didn't go for loans. So we would have 1 meal a day. The other family would feed heavily like kings and princesses. At the end of the day, when the gentleman passed on, that's when the banks came running for them. Do you know that, yeah, we had a laugh, just a minute, we had a laugh for a while. when the banks came, but this gentleman had actually educated his children. Right now, as we speak, his children have actually redeemed the family from the debt, and then we, who our fathers sat back and looked on, and were worried and scared of going for the loans, are scorching for life.
Komaket, the scenario that you have painted for us actually contradicts the statements that you made earlier, because then we are this family, and when things go hayway, the owners of the debt are going to come for us as a country, and perhaps we may see a scenario where China comes to take Uganda because of the money that we're borrowing. Just painting a picture, and this is where I want to bring in the Dr. Muhomuza here. He has talked about the theme of the financial year, the budget that we're referring to right now, monetarization, agriculture, commercialization, etc., and the reflection thereof in justifying the borrowing that is happening. What's your comment on that?
First comment is that's a very sad thing that when we formulated the budget with that theme and took it to Parliament for appropriation, fuel prices were 3,800. Fuel prices have reached 6,500. In some places 10,000. You don't longer talk about monetization of the economy. You cannot say, but I decided 10 years ago or 12 months ago to do this. You have to realign your budget immediately to those realities. So the problem with Uganda's policy making is not being adaptive to emerging conditions. When he began, he said, the roads to Aru County are bad. They cannot be accessed. Now, when that is the problem, you don't begin to discuss electricity access. If a person can't even access a school next door, a health facility next door, a market, an input, you are not going to be discussing electricity access. You switch. Right now, yesterday we were seeing in the papers the problem that UNRWA has. Unpaid bills, and you are accumulating 342 million shillings per day of interest. You want to first fix that bleeding. If you go to a hospital and you're bleeding, the doctor is not going to say, but this person has a history of hypertension, because that's what we have been treating. So do they have that? No, let's first stop the bleeding. So can we first focus on access, that people can access markets, people can do, even the investor you're talking about that you want to attract to come here and invest because you want to give them electricity. That investor is not looking at your electricity. Investment is not because there is electricity. Investment because there is a market. Now, when they come to Aru County and say, how many people here can buy shoes? At least a pair per year. And there is none.
If the 100 cannot access electricity, then how much more?
So you begin to look at things in realistic and pragmatic faces and lenses, and then you are able to make a response. So a lot of our borrowing is not speaking to our problems. And that's why it has not solved our problem. We have borrowed for the last 20, 30 years.
So, Doctor, the reality is that we must have access to electricity as a country in 2022. That should not be Uganda's problem if we're exporting to Kenya and Rwanda, and yet in our very own country we're not having full access. And so I believe the backbone of it is good intentions to service Uganda. But then again, how they've managed it, what is your comment on how they've managed it, and what would have been the alternative way of getting access to electricity and funding?
No, the point is, do you even want to talk about access to electricity? You want to be speaking to your population, the people you represent. If you are to ask them now what is the immediate need for the next 2, 3, 4 years, is it access to electricity? And the way you are delivering it from the grid? Electricity is nice to have. You can charge your phone. Solar panels can still work. So I would be happy, instead of putting another sugar factory in Uganda, to invest in a solar panel manufacturing plant. That's alone I would want to have a conversation on, because securing your future. But not to do transmissions again, Bujagali, I don't know to where. And no, this person's household cannot even connect to the grid. A lot of houses in Uganda are not eligible for grid power connection. They are for solar. So you want to get into that route of solar. And we have seen actually, people have voted with their feet. While government is borrowing to do transmissions, a lot of electricity access has been through solar. So I can have a conversation there and say, how can we lower the taxes, if there are any, on solar panels? Okay. The other day we were disputing gas cylinders. To who? The real person we are talking about needs like a solar panel double the size of this book to connect to their grass-thatched house, charge their phone, actually reach out to their relative, have this child read. When are we going to go basic? These are the realities. You've seen Ukraine is a rich country, But you're saying, guys, winter is coming, we don't have electricity. We are at war. So can some of you leave the country and go and find where to be so that we can go through these 6 months? Now, those are the things you want Uganda to bring. You don't begin to say, oh, let me restore now my power. Ukraine could have been doing that, to say, they have been bombed there, let me replace it. So this is not the time to do things that give us a return 5 years from now. And I don't know when he last checked, when he says debt to GDP. First of all, debt to GDP is the wrong indicator. Nobody should ever mention it in this country. It's a completely misleading indicator, and it has brought us where we are. So nobody should mention debt to GDP. We are above 50%, but that doesn't matter. What matters most is you can't pay the doctors who are treating and dealing with Ebola in Mitiana, just because the money you had to pay your creditors. That's the cost of debt. You are failing now. Students who are on government scholarships and government loans are failing to sit their exams because the government loan scheme is not disbursing. It has no money. Now, those are the things that, where did that money go? You paid debt. So debt costs must be interpreted in what is the alternative lost at this point, because the money I had, I paid debt. Not debt to GDP. Completely wrong thing. Anybody who says it, if you have a prison, please put them there so that they don't intoxicate society.
What is the alternative that is being lost at the expense of, you know, accepting these loans? Okay, Honorable Komaket, in regards to still some loans, there's a little body that has informed us that government is also receiving a grant of about $276 million US, and that is definitely for the same cause of electricity. Can you confirm this to us?
We are getting loan of around 3.4 trillion. Our budget is 48 somehow trillion. But then 2 of these loans come with grants, the one for digital and the one for electricity expansion in the country. It's I'm not sure of the figures, but they come with grants onto that. The benefit, I'll still speak to these loans. The benefit of getting the loan is, unless if the doctor is trying to tell us that you need to tax more, and that is a hard bone to swallow for a government, especially looking at the COVID situation we have been, Ebola is in. We are in a crisis. Not only Uganda, the entire globe is in a crisis. It's estimated that around 88 trillion will be the debt for governments globally. Now, Uganda is not exceptional. We are trying to move from a state of surviving to live. When we go for electricity, we are not looking at lighting per se. You look at Aru. Aru is totally agricultural, and we are looking at improving on our raw materials. We do not have to sell the raw materials, and you need electricity to hold the rice. You need electricity, which is stored right now.
That is true. We've said let's first get the roads. You've said the place are not accessible.
We are going to the roads. Yeah, the first loan, which is around 1.4, was to service the roads. Now there are 3 loans that we have in 3.4. Okay. We are only settling at electricity and digital right now, but there was the first one around 1.4, and the minister was so clear that one is going to set off the Harriers supposed to be paid. Right now, he spoke of UNRWA. UNRWA, every day that passes by, has Harriers around 100 million that comes by. The minister told us they are in debt areas around 500 billion. So, do we sit back and wait for this money to accumulate, or we take a breath to survive and get loan so that we seal off the what? We seal off the money. Besides, in 10 years to come, fuel is on the way. Gold reserves are on their acting. I remember when the president gave a speech, actually he was taking us through the economic state of the country. He was so sure that by 2022, we'd be selling our fuel. Which politics has kind of...
The first fuel selling was 2012. Then there was 2017. Then there was 2020.
Then there was a lockdown.
Now it's 2025.
There was a COVID lockdown. There was a COVID
no, it had nothing to do with
lockdown was unprecedented. You couldn't do it.
Lockdown left her in the job. Lockdown left the oil companies supposed to be working.
So in regards to what he's pointing out, and he's saying, unless we are willing to shoot ourselves in the foot and increase the taxation on Ugandans to be able to cover what we need to cover as government to provide good good services to the citizens,
Yeah.
what will be the other way around it? And earlier on, you were looking at a graph consolidating finances.
Yes. You know, it's easy to mention something. We all want to give blood. But I always tell people, you're going to go to the blood donation place. The doctors first say, do you have blood to give? So some people you'll find they will be told, thank you very much for the willingness, but please first go and eat some greens, and you also need your own blood. We don't want to create a problem. Now you cannot just invoke and say, can we increase taxation? Tax who? I walk downtown and there is hardly anybody to tax. You go through the suburbs out there, there is hardly anybody to tax. Because there is what we call taxable income. You don't just tax a business. The business must have made taxable income. Household and earnings, pay as you earn, begins at 235,000. So anybody earning below that has no taxable income. You want to leave them to survive. Even we have presumptive tax on businesses. You look at a business and say, do you make 10 million a year? Okay, you pay so much. But many of these businesses now have sunk down. As we've said, you want to address an emergency. And I like the way he has said, it's not Uganda alone. So can Uganda respond like other countries are responding? I've just given you the case of Ukraine, how they have responded. Europe, they're having energy costs rising. They are subsidizing the vulnerable. So they are saying if anybody's energy heating costs go this far, the government will step in because you must exist. Now, in Uganda, do we have those social protection measures? Do we even know where our vulnerable are? We are still debating the money for COVID. The report has come to you guys. Part of this money was to save those who are really vulnerable and disenfranchised by COVID. You don't have the systems. You don't have the willingness. You don't have the commitment. We just store the money.
What would be the applicable social protection?
You know some things, the way we make policies, we do not have, partly we don't have the numbers, but also the commitment. I wouldn't have a problem finding money that we are spending on certain things to begin with those students who have loans from government. That's social protection. Because these are people who will not go to university or to other colleges. But if you can't find money even to pay, to give them the loan, remember it's a loan. These are not on government sponsorship. They are taking a loan. But now they can't sit the exam because universities are saying you haven't finished your tuition. That social protection fails you. So you want to look for such people. Now I hear people are resuming to fly abroad. Zoom came and we're having meetings. Every other day I have a meeting abroad.
Zelensky is on having Zoom meetings.
People are still flying abroad. Can you address those? Can we find some money and resume the Nabanja 100,000 a month?
And resume it?
Yes. For this time,
Doctor,
clean up, and this is how it works. This is how it works. This is how it works. We put SME recovery fund, 200 billion. As we speak, only just about 5 billion has been utilized.
Between you and
now,
me,
if you get that money,
yes.
Let me finish my story.
No, let me just interrupt you.
Yes.
Even if we do that, there's people who hold power to that dispensing that money, then to the rightful.
That is what you clean up. That's what you clean up, and we have not cleaned it. The intention was good. The delivery mechanism was bad.
So if we have not cleaned up that, then how does
now that's what you are saying. If this thing happened 1 year ago, we knew these people. We knew the loopholes. You clean them up. 1 year down the road, we should have cleaned up that. Because how do you revive an SME? You don't put money in a bank and say, you go and borrow. They will never access it. But an SME survives on its sales. So if I had gathered this 200 billion for SME recovery fund, sent it to your relatives in the village who are poor, they are going to turn up that same day at that SME and begin to buy. The SME will be revived. So it's simple economic understanding. But we put a lot of politics into it. We put a lot of emotions into it and say, no, they should be... No, I'm actually targeting the SME, even as I said, Nabanja money. Because these guys are not going to sit on that money. They are not going to take that child back to school. The school will restart. They are going to buy that drug, that clinic in the Abngitis will come back. It just bounces into their pockets and back into the economy. So if you are monetizing the economy, you start there. So the Europeans, when they say unemployment benefits, not because they love those households. They actually love the manufacturers is talking about, who you give electricity, and they want to say, I've made books, can I sell them? If those people have no money, the manufacturer doesn't produce. So I'm taking a selfish interest to protect my middle income by sending money down, and it finds its way up. The economics works like that. Simple senior 5 economics of what we call the circular flow of income. That's how you monetize the economy. The current policy on access and I don't know what, no way.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So we are borrowing for the wrong policies.
Honorable Komakate, in regards to that, I understand the objective, I know, is to increase access to households, commercial enterprises, the industrialization that you want to monetize and service, public institutions. Now, from 19% to 44% by 2027, we still have time. So we can honestly minimize how much we take in right now, focus on also ensuring that the basics are covered by 2027, then we can increase the usage of some of these things. So why not then alter and look into the basics right now? Clean energy is an option on ground that can be used for cooking. You can increase that in the meantime, and people get to then, again, offer the option of circulating and supporting the economy right now. What's your say on that?
This government is not against clean energy. Actually, it's one of the avenues government is taking. Look at Chera Motors. Wherever Chera Motors is doing is promoting clean energy. But then when we speak of solar, we also need to speak of the quality of the equipment we bring into the country. I bought a solar lamp. I was in the coast just one day, but I bought a solar lamp at 50,000. But the lamp will not operate even for 1 hour. 1 hour.
I have
50,000
catalog
fully charged.
of dead ones at home, so I stopped buying.
You know, so we need to also look into what we are speaking of solar energy, but then do we have the prerequisites, or do we have the standards of the gadgets that are supposed to operate within the country? That now comes to UBS. Although I want to also go to the doctor. Doctor speaks of CMAs. You know, these small enterprises need electricity. You know, these small enterprises need good roads to transport their things, which the government is actually looking at. Without these loans, however much money you give to these businesses, it still go back. Earlier on, I overheard you speak of the cars. Yeah? You have bad roads, you still spend more on a car. Now the fuel too, the fuel consumption, all that goes into what it is. But then when we go to social policies, Ukraine has gone on, but then the president of the Republic of Uganda is on record. He came out audibly, although people mocked and laughed about it, that it's high time we start eating cassava. Hypothetically, he spoke of cassava. But then when I speak of cassava, I really felt the cassava when its real pinch came into Parliament. Local government didn't have funds to use. The Prime Minister gave me food relief for children with nodding disease. I went to my district and the cow told me, I do not have even a coin to fuel this truck to take the food to the locals.
That's the cost of debt. The cow's budget
are we there?
had gone into interest payment.
Are we there?
Right.
Yeah, let me come. That's how hard it is. There came in Parliament, things came to stall. Having stationery was a problem.
Yes.
Which is a fact. But then we are saying, what do we do? I bought in taxation. It's hard not to buy it or crack right now. He even came out, who are you going to tax?
Exactly.
Then the best thing is, let's go borrowing. As we go through this hard turmoil that we are in, which is, it won't take for long. 2, 3, 4, 5 years. The loan we are getting are 10. But do we have hope of repaying it? Yeah, we do. When electricity is in Pade, electricity is in Kalangala, electricity is in those far-reaching areas where production is. There's industrialization, industrial parks coming up. In Pade, we are glad we are waiting for that park to come in. But that park needs electricity.
Should we come sit in back 2030?
And no, right now as I speak, MOU was signed with a company in South Africa, and they are doing their survey.
Yes, they do a survey and we pack the report, we build it in 2030.
It won't come in 2030, then the loans will come by.
For now, let's first pay their raw children's fees so that they can go and sit their exams. And they work in that factory. Because if they don't, South Africans will bring South Africans to work in here, and your raw people will be the night watchmen.
Honorable, let me ask you, what is embedded within this 1.2 trillion shillings that we are getting as government? What are the terms and conditions on it?
It's supposed to be paid in a span of 10 years.
Yeah.
10 years, then it has a grace period of around 4. Grace period around 4 years. It comes with a grant too. A grant of around $133 US. You know, That's what's in it. Until the agent is still Standard Chartered Bank, although the country is lending us, it's a company in Japan, an insurance company in Japan, and then also an insurance cooperative organization in the Islamic world, the Muslim world.
And how are we intending to give back this money?
How we intend to give back that money? The minister does not stipulate it. But then when we look at it, one, we are looking at revamping our economy through industrialization. The budget speaks it all. Yeah, expanding market access. Then we can pay back this. But then I was also telling you, we are an endowed country. In anticipation of the fuel, in anticipation of the gold, which is a bit promising. We are not borrowing from a black background. Okay. Yeah, there is a future waiting on.
Unfortunately, we can't borrow from what we don't have in our hands, but that's a conversation that will come back.
The oil is in our hands. The gold is in our hands.
Conversation will return shortly.
Watching Morning at TV.
I will let you know that it's hot in here because the loan syndrome is not just affecting the top, but it's affecting the bottom of the chain thereof. And I'll start with you, Doctor. Maybe let's take it back 20 years ago. The borrowing that we have done in the past 20 years, what have been the opportunity costs to that borrowing, not just to government, but to the list of Ugandans, direct and indirect, positive and negative?
Of course, people tell you when we borrow, and these assumptions, when we borrow, we'll invest, the economy will grow, and then eventually we'll be able to pay back the loan. That reality over the last 20 years is not with us. The debt that is maturing is supposed to be paid, about 8 trillion is being rolled over. Now, when you roll it over, it means I've not given you back your money. So I still have your principal with me, but you're going to ask for interest. Now, remember, there is no new money you have given me. We are talking about the past to balance the books. But the interest must be new money I must give to you. So our interest payment has been growing, and you have that 8 trillion rolled over. You have a 6 trillion of interest to pay. Part of it, not on any new money. So you want to first check out that 8 trillion and say, can I pay that? Now, if you can't pay that, then you begin to question, what did the money I borrowed do? And then that same question, economics, about explaining the past and projecting the future. What is the new money I am borrowing going to do? What has changed? If the thinking is still the same, that industrial parks will bring growth, check Namamve. What has it given you? It hasn't enabled you to cover that loan. Check the airport improvement project. Check the energy generation and transmission
Ideally,
projects.
actually, what you have is enough to enrich you to be able to service the loans and the interest.
And that's why the economics comes in to say you have fixed investments, but what makes money is the recurrent spending. You guys here, the owners of this television, bought cameras and put everything in place. But what really makes money through these adverts are the stories you bring, is the content you have brought us here to do. So if you have no non-wage recurrent, you have a hotel without food, you have a hotel without bed sheets, that hotel will not make money. You don't tell people, but my hotel is there, it's very big, it's worth 7 billion. It is these daily things. Now, the moment government gets to a level where non-wage is unable to be funded, you get into a problem. Now, that's the true cost of debt. So your debt is beginning to fail you to even make progress. Now, you cannot borrow yourself out of debt. Now, let me borrow more now. This time I'm going to first go back what happened in the past, explain it. Corruption. Auditor General is exposing the rot in COVID-19
And
deals.
all they're doing is asking these persons to return money.
You can replace the word...
in the places of power.
You can replace the word COVID-19 deals with anything. Road deals, energy deals, every deals, whatever deals, everything in this country. Corruption cannot just be imagined away. It's part of this problem. And until we walk through it, any new money borrowed will not give us the value we need for this plane to take off. So that's one thing. But also, as we've said, the conceptualization. The idea that an industrial park would attract industries. Economics is very clear. People invest to serve a demand. if you have not demand in that country, or other foreigners are taking advantage of meeting that demand, you have a problem. And now when we say in Uganda, you're here, Mivumba, you tax them highly. Where is the cotton in Uganda? Can you afford, as a poor person who sells coffee, 5 bags a year, to do all the things that you do at that family? You cannot afford a Ugandan-made cloth. It's too expensive. So those are the dynamics you want to come back to and say, how are we funding the economy? That's one. But what are we funding? The policies and the strategies. It doesn't matter how much you borrow. If you're funding the wrong things, you are going down a rat hole. And the rats will eat your feet from down there.
And who's taking us down the rat hole?
Now, this is where the conversation comes in. What policies go to Parliament? And what is Parliament asking? If we say we are monetizing the economy, how are you monetizing the economy when poverty levels are rising, when roads have not been done? What exactly are you doing by meaning you are monetizing the economy? And if COVID hit us, how are we adjusting? The record is very clear. We all increased our borrowing during COVID, and we are continuing to increase that borrowing. My worry is now we are borrowing at shorter tenure and never think of a grant or a grace period. World Bank sometimes gives us 6 years of grace period, and the loan hasn't disbursed for 3 years. So part of your grace period is gone.
It's gone.
Where do you fix that? World Bank, I think, has given us loans of about 5.5 billion. We have only used the 30% disbursed. So what is the problem? The problem is not the borrowing. The problem is actually in here, some institutional reforms that are needed, some firing of individuals that are needed. You really need to send a signal that anybody, the cost of misusing public funds is this high. But if you keep it this low, every frog is going to jump into that house. And you have what the Egyptians had to let the Israelis go, frogs everywhere. You can't make progress. So for me, the quiet Parliament is to say first, wait a minute. Can we discuss borrowing next week? Today, how do we fix the entities and institutions that are going to make sure this loan actually works?
Where you sit, Honorable Komaket, and I know it's from good intentions that Parliament is making these decisions, and we do commend Parliament for that regard. However, we still have to look at the realities that while we are taking on these monies, they are going to be incurred. And we cannot, you may not have the power, you may have the power to agree to have this money borrowed, but you may not have the power to then watch over it and to see to it that it has brought fruition to what it was meant to do in real time for the span that you're talking about. In this particular case, the 14 years that have been granted by the World Bank over payment of this loan. So in that regard, how then do you intend to have an upper hand on ensuring that what we already have considered as bad debt does not become worse debt?
Thank you. One thing I would want to appreciate is that the 11th Parliament found a loan debt. And the 11th Parliament, not the 10th, the 11th, is doing everything to make sure it betters the economy of the country. How? When you look at the loans that we are okaying at the moment, one is most of the loans are not going direct to the ministry. Look at the digital, the digital improvement loan. The loan, I remember so much. I was in the floor that day. Honorable Chris Barriomonsi so much wanted to be in control. But we are telling him, why can't these loans go to the direct departments that are going to utilize the loan so that we can hold them accountable? I so agree with Doctor that corruption has really taken us backward. The reason wouldn't be, the problem wouldn't be the loans. But then the technocrats, at the end of the day, Parliament is going to pass these loans. It's not Parliament going to oversee the loan usage. It's going to the technocrats down. Which technocrats are not actually patriotic.
So then why is Parliament making such decisions very well knowing and aware of the rot that is happening down? As you pride in the 11th Parliament, why not then front the act against corruption before you actually get us?
We are fronted corruption not once, not twice. The IGG bought a report actually to the Speaker, and we are going to go through it. But then give the 11th Parliament a benefit of a doubt for once. Let us approve these loans, then we run after it. We are not dwindling down the economy. We are actually looking at salvaging what had already been dwindled down. And if we do not go for these loans, trust me, we'll stop eating cassava and
Honorable, I want to see you in the 12th Parliament.
I'll be there.
And hear your views on the 11th Parliament. Because now you seem to be saying the 11th Parliament is fixing the problems of the 10th and 9th and 7th. The 12th Parliament will be asking exactly the same questions.
We have loans that were acquired and never utilized.
Yes, and the 12th Parliament is going to have those loans acquired by the 11th Parliament.
And I can assure you that 12th Parliament, who the Speaker is still going to be on the Right Honourable Anita Among, won't have such kind of atrocities happening again.
It will be asking the same questions.
It's unfortunate for you because that's not even very far as we speak.
And I want to see you back. I wish you well.
Thank you, Doctor. I take the blessing.
Call me to Aru. I want to be there and tell them.
I'll call you to campaign for me so that you can come and tussle it out here.
I also want to come and see that is if I can access Aru at that point.
And the electricity, if it would have reached.
The other day I saw the road to Arua. I said, okay. And people were debating on social media. Is Arua now handed over to
However, in that very same place, you do have a lot of private investment that is going on, that has been granted, of course, by government.
Yes.
And
these are the
with the bad roads, but they're still having heavy investment that is going on. For the future of it, away from the bad roads. Just recently, Doctor, we did have government also, endorsing that loan of the ICT loan, the 500 billion Ugandan shillings. Our loan debt is about 80 trillion right now.
No, that was before.
That was before.
These ones. So we're now about 80, towards 85.
Now we are towards
and
85.
Still counting.
Okay, 85 and still counting, more than our budget.
And by the way, we are not counting these other arrears. Because arrears is also a loan. I delivered, you owe me. So whether it went through Parliament or it's not, it's a debt on your books by way of accounts. So the 590 or whatever UNRWA puts on the table, I don't know what NITA has to put on the table, I don't know where else. We need, and quote awards, put them on the table.
So what are the general outcomes?
So the outcomes really, you want to say, what is the impact of this? And don't lose sight of, we are in the World Cup, don't lose sight of the goal. The goal is really to improve the welfare of Ugandans. That's the goal. You can do so many things in this speech, pass, do whatever. Don't lose sight of the outcome is basically the welfare of Ugandans. Okay. So everything we do, we need to connect it to that. As we said, corruption is a cancer. How do doctors deal with cancers? You can learn from medical school. Stop the blood. Kill the cells. These are some of the chemotherapy, I don't know, whatever other things. Don't give the cancer the nutrition it needs to continue growing. So sometimes you say, guys, no more loans until you guys have dealt with corruption. Because the moment you let the loans go through, the cancer cells are going to celebrate.
Them to
and now you have just given the cancer. Exactly.
And that's what I was telling you.
The cancer is going to breed.
You're feeding the cancer.
The cancer is going to breed. You tell these guys, until you fix this, anybody whose Auditor General's records are not right, no money for you. But remember, you're punishing the citizens. So you just tell this guy, performance indicator, if you don't fix corruption in your department in 1 year, your contract is off. But as long as they continue working,
this is what members of parliament do. They will approve these loans, and then they will come out to ask the public, the constituencies, and the people they represent, and speak ill in front of this public about the things that they have approved behind the scenes. So isn't Parliament letting Ugandans down at this point in time in terms of leadership?
I don't think that's a right statement. Categorically looking at it, there's no way I would prove a loan. I've had chance to be, not chance actually, I was there when approving these 2 loans, and I've gone back to my councils and told them, you know, we need this money. If we don't get these loans, arrears are going up. Either way, we are still going to pay by our teeth. Then why don't we go and the aim here is to gain kind of peace, have a sleepful night over it, as we strategize on what we are going to. I can assure you, how do you repay? We have Algeria coming for our milk. No, and they're going to buy in millions of US dollars. No, we have Egypt set up a company just along Gulu Highway. They are running for our beef. And if you go to northern Uganda right now, most people are on beef fattening. No, the economy is and will get there. We have industrialization, all these kind of things promising coming up. I believe we can actually beat our loan if we fight corruption, if we become more patriotic by people like Doctor, people like you actually painting a green, a clear, a loving nation to the citizens. But if we look back and lose hope, at the end of the day, Uganda is still going to survive.
So
should we lose hope?
There's a constituency member out there that is asking, how are you going to fight corruption in the 11th Parliament?
In the 11th Parliament, one, get the bull by the horn. I don't actually, I don't agree with the IGG's report. The IGG, Honorable Betty, I'm coming there.
Are you going to tell the person there, they're going to ask you, what is the bull, who's the bull, and
no,
who's the horn?
Fire, not once, not twice, we have had officials who have been corrupt, and the Speaker has actually instructed these ministers, can you not just transfer the person? Can you fire the person? Get them into prison, let them pay. And then let me correct this, the aim is here. Get them into prison and let them pay. What would you want Parliament to do? Kill them? Really, that would be taking us centuries backward. Should we be that barbaric? They are Ugandan. And these are your children.
Just a follow-up.
They are your uncles.
Just a follow-up. According to you, as a citizen of this country and also as a member of Parliament, which are those bulls that need to be held by the horn?
And do they have horns?
The cows.
Do they have horns?
We are coming there. We are coming there.
I need names of institutes and.
You would want me to really go that person?
Yes.
Will I retain my seat?
Not persons, institutes. Institutions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Obviously, there's someone who controls that institution. I would love to refrain myself.
So how are you going to hold the bull by the horn?
When the IGG, when the IGG brings that particular report, I wish I'd gone through the report to know the bull, and I would be pointing it to you right now.
I'll have you back here on regards to corruption and how you intend to eliminate it as the 11th Parliament that you pride in. Back to you, Doctor. What's the future of this country's economy with the present times, the revising borrowing models? Are they good? Are they going to help us manage the present debts and the debts that we have carried forward to date?
And there's also the future of Honorable Komakech. The person you talked about who is watching him now, one of them wants his seat.
Not one, many.
Now those fellows will use this same.
Protect his seat.
These fellows will use this same clip and say, "You said." So this thing will be. They will pick it up. So please make sure you don't give them the blood that we are giving to the cancerous cells. You actually stop it. The future of this country is really, and that's why we want to say, don't compare debt to GDP. GDP is as of now and the past. The GDP of the future is not known. But the debt of the future, because all your debt is in the future, that is known. That's why you want to compare and say, what is my amortization? Most of the banks that foreclose on people's loans is because they have failed to pay. Now, not that they didn't want to pay, but because they took assumptions. I am investing in this factory, I'm investing in this factory, I will process the cows, I will sell the milk to Algerians, I will pay you, Mr. Bank. Are those assumptions realistic? Because the moment you take that loan and that future does not happen, you're losing your assets. So Uganda is not doing a lot of the investments now, a lot of the assumptions now, to give me assurance that we are there. By then, in sub-Saharan Africa, there is no country that is now in low debt situation, distress. They are moderate, high, and debt distressed countries, including Uganda, who have transitioned into that, according to the IMF report that has come through. So as we gradually increase towards debt distress, you want to rethink. And we need a very candid conversation with Mr. Museveni. The same conversations he had with a group of people, including the late Professor Muterire, you had the late Kasami, you had people like Professor Suruma. In the 80s and 90s, when we scaled down government, I don't mind going back to the COVID rules to say, Mr. Government, every ministry find which 40% of the staff will be coming to office. We went through COVID, government continued to work. Can we pack half of the government fleet, except the essentials? And if the essentials don't include the blue number, red number plates of M, which is medical, if this medical officer is going to work in the Ministry of Health, I want to rethink where those guys should not have a bus that picks them up and brings them and takes them back. These are measures you want to really manage your spending because you don't have the money and you won't solve it by borrowing. So manage your spending. Can I scale down the 48 trillion back to 38, but protecting the vital services? This is what doctors do in intensive care. The vital organs must continue to work. But your leg, fine, they can even cut off that one. It's not essential for your survival. So can we get to those serious conversations? Have them with the president. We must not forget we have a war in the Congo. That way you cannot stop the soldiers from eating and moving.
Yeah.
So, and we say as one thing goes up, this is counter-cyclical policies. As one thing goes up, you must lower another one to remain on the average. So even at 48 trillion, we can pass it because the budget the military is spending is not what we had planned for them. They need supplementary, and as long as they are out there, I will support money going to them. But I must find it from somewhere else, not through borrowing.
Therefore, I must cut off someone else.
Cut off somebody else. Yeah. So can we rethink of those ideas on how do we move forward to remain alive to pay that debt without further digging the rat hole of debt? The current trend is worrying. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Doctor, and thank you so much, Honorable Komakecha, for those submissions in regards to the, the loan syndrome and how it's mounting. At the end of the day, the reality of the matter is that we must realign, or government, Ministry of Finance, and the stakeholders, those that have the tools of power and pen, realign to present-day challenges while we do plan for a hopeful future. That brings us to the end of our Kickstarter conversation this morning. Chris Igenyi returns